Hello and welcome to Resolutionary Leaders. I'm your host, Helena Gatto. Today we have Justin Jackson, who is going to inspire the bejesus out of you. He has an amazing story, came from a lot of adversity and has made quite the success for himself. Welcome to the podcast,
Thank
Justin.
you. How are you?
I am good. I know you've got all kinds of sound effects in your studio. I wish I had those sound effects, but I just jazzy with my vocal cords. So you have a podcast that's called the Real Chat Podcast, and it's about righteous education.
Yes,
right?
righteous education about life. And so that podcast, a little bit of history about the podcast, it actually started as a support group when I was incarcerated. So when I was incarcerated in jail, I was doing a year for some stuff that I did when I was younger. And about 2009, I was facing 12 years in prison. And I actually became good friends with this district attorney, the prosecutor, over time. So this prosecutor, over a 2-year period, wanted to put me away for 12 years because he was only looking at a file. All he saw was a number. Hey, this guy, we're going to give him the typical 12 years for what he did. And over that time period, I ended up getting a year. So the judge had leniency on me. So she must have saw something in me that I didn't see myself at the time. This district attorney saw something in me that I didn't see. And I ended up with a year. So while I was sitting in jail, I started talking to a group of guys and I would listen to their stories. And they would just, a couple of them, it was the same thing over and over. When I get out, I'm going to do this better. I'm going to commit this crime better. I'm just not going to talk to this person. And I'm like, how about you just don't do it? Like when you get out, like just change your ways. You know what I mean? So I started this group called Real Chat, and we would get together every night at 6:00 and we would read a couple Bible verses and we would just have conversations about their families, their kids. And I was like, man, I'm going to turn this into an actual group when I get out of here. I got out and I never did that. I got out and I started falling back into some of my old bad habits and it never came to fruition. As I got older and I reached out to this district attorney because his words resonated with me. When this district attorney told me, he said, hey man, you're a really smart guy. He was like, when you get out of here, he was like, look me up. And he was like, I want you to come talk to these young men in drug court and maybe you can help them. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. And I never did. So maybe about 8 years go by. So about 2018, 2019, I reached out to him and I said, hey, does that offer still stand? I said, I want to start helping people. And I reached out to him and I went and I did my first public speaking engagement at a high school of about 300 students. And I was nervous. I was afraid. I got in there and I'm like, man, I don't even know what to say. And the thing that really lit that fire was the arresting officer, who was a DEA agent, was the school liaison. So he had to do a security check on me before I could come into the school and speak. And when he saw my name, he said, man, I recognize the name. He said, but I had to see for myself. And he met me at the door and he stayed there through the whole entire speech and was the first one to shake my hand after I got done. And that did something to me. That right there made me feel a type of way where I was like, I'm not who I used to be. And I can definitely be better than what I was. I got to speak to these kids and then I started getting emails and they were like, hey, who's that guy that came here to speak? Can we contact him directly? I got some questions for him. And I was like, oh man. And I used to have a traveling basketball team for my oldest son when he was about 14. So he was like, hey dad, he was like, we should have our own basketball team. So I started a traveling summer league, the Wolfpack, Great Lakes Wolfpack basketball. And we started this traveling team with my son and a bunch of his friends. And we used to travel around and they have all these tournaments and everything. So I started going by the name Coach Jackson. So then after I did this speaking engagement, I was like, okay, so I was a basketball coach. I was like, so now I'm going to try to be a life coach. So it transpired into the Real Chat podcast. I never thought that this group would turn into a podcast, but here we are.
So what happened in 1819 that made you finally reach out and be open to speaking?
So in 2018, my older son was probably about 14, 15 years old. And I had an incident with him where I was involved with fentanyl. And during that period, I was addicted to fentanyl patches. I had injured myself and I was doing painkillers. And then this just spiraled out of control. Now, I did a lot of crazy things growing up, but that is something that took a hold of me that I had no control of. I never saw that coming. To the point where it was
Wow.
just ruining and destroying every relationship I had. It was destroying the relationship I had with my mother. Uh, my mother was prescribed fentanyl patches due to her medical issues. And so it was basically like I had a live-in pharmacy. So this went on for about 13 years. And I ended up getting into an altercation with my son. And at 15 years old, he told me, he said, Dad, he was like, how are you going to tell me what to do when you don't even have your life together? And I got physical with him. And one of the chief of police officers that have been dealing with me for many years, he just took me to the side and said, Justin, let him go. He said, hey, so that day I went, and the next day I checked myself into a rehab. And I said, hey, I got to get clean. I got to change my life for him. And from that day on, I just been moving forward. That day, I never went back to narcotics. I drink these days, but I don't drug and do the things I used to do. So now I go around and I speak at a lot of events where people are struggling with things like that are having issues with their kids. So I just had to be in a lockdown facility. And once I was clear headed, I got out and I said, hey, I want to be better. I got to be better for them. I got to be better for my community. And I just started speaking from that moment on. So every chance I get, I try to speak at schools. I try to speak at community centers. With the Real Chat podcast, I get to hear other people's stories. I get to hear the struggles and everything they go through. And I learn from that. That's where I started speaking. It came out of adversity. My family was very involved with drugs growing up. My mother was a drug addict, alcoholic. My father was a drug addict. When I lost my father at 7 years old. At 7 years old, he was shooting heroin with his insulin. So he ended up having a stroke. And I found him at 7 years old, unresponsive, and still went to school that day. So that day I went to school, and I honestly think that's where my criminal history kind of started, because before that, we would have dinner and talk about school and homework and, oh, how was school? We have all this family time, and things changed after that. After that, it was back to the inner city of Milwaukee, and I started running with gangs and looking for a family outside of my family. So that kind of...
Let me ask you, what do you attribute your ability to thrive, to go through all of that, which is unimaginable for most people, and then to be this level-headed dude who's bringing up his kids in a fabulous relationship and thriving?
Well,
what do you attribute
I
that
think
to?
I attribute that to just, it's like bouncing a basketball. You got to bounce back. And that's a skill. That's a skill that you have to obtain from like-minded people around you. Surround yourself with people that are going to support you. One of my favorite things is saying is you got to trim the fat. So if people don't add value to your life, you got to let them go. You got to cut them out.
So I want to jump in here, and because you're a little out of the box of what I usually do on my podcast, because it's a lot of workplace dispute resolution.
Perfect.
And the reason why I think that you are so relevant is because when you are in a toxic work environment, and it's all relevant, right? What's toxic for you? Your tolerance to a toxic environment is probably quite different than other people's. And so when you aren't used to that and you're in a toxic work environment, it is incredibly debilitating, and it really impacts people's mental health, their physical health, and they need to really go through it and to either move on or be able to thrive in their job. They've got to be able to bounce back.
Right.
And I think that ability and the skill set around that, and what you just said about surrounding yourself by really good people, is such an important piece to the ability to bounce back. So I want you to just keep going with the bouncing back.
You said the workforce toxicity. So I work a third shift job outside of everything else I do. So during the day, I do the podcast, I do life coaching, I take care of my kids and the family and things like that. But then I work a third shift job. And honestly, I hate going there because the guys that I work directly with are just toxic. But I have to be able to say, hey, we can keep it cordial, but I don't like you. I don't like working with you. And I think more or less it's being honesty. If you can't realize that the place that you're working is toxic, you can't fix the problem. And a lot of times we go through our work life where you just want to be cordial. You just want to come in and get out, and you don't actually bring up the problems. So for me, I actually had a little powwow with second shift and third shift because the second shift guys were still there. And I was like, hey, don't leave yet. I was like, you need to listen to this too. I was like, we got to do better, man. I said, that part of comes from me being a coach and things like that. I have something to bring to the table. And I'm like, we got to do better. I was like, because there was a text message. We're on a group chat between all of the shifts and our supervisor's on there. And it was funny because one of the guys mentioned he thought he was texting the supervisor directly. And he ended up on the group chat. And then the guy he was talking about chimed in. And next thing, there's 4 messages over like 3 hours. And I'm like, finally I chimed in and I'm like, look, I said, hey, I said, this is a personal phone, man. I said, this ain't no business phone. I said, but you guys are going back and forth arguing about who's doing what and who's not doing their job. And I said, and our supervisor's at home. He works first shift and he's asleep. So I said, you guys are waking this guy up with the phone just going off. I was like, just that kind of toxic environment makes you not want to go to work. I'm just like, I don't even want to work here anymore. I'm going to look for a new job. But the job I have is really good because it's third shift. I work in a warehouse, so I have time to write down potential guests on my podcast. I have time to go on social media and post my videos and stuff like that during downtime. So it's a good job. But the people I work with is just, hey, I got to make this aware that you guys are toxic. And like one of the guys, we have an agreement. I don't help you. You don't help me. But hey, I do my job. I don't need your help. So it's just like, how do we work through that other than talking to each other about it? So I guess what I want to ask you is, how do you handle that situation?
You might need some help from me. No, that is not the advice. But I think what you've done though is that you've looked at the situation and this is the reality of it. It's not fixable. This is who this person is. I'm here for these reasons, and this is how I will operate here.
Right.
And that is not a sustainable. Is this somewhere you want to be in 10 years?
Oh, no, that's somewhere where I'm not going to be in maybe a year because when they ask me, do you want to move up? How do you feel about promotions? And I says, I'm not going to be here. So that's the mindset that I have, that this is temporary. So I'll be cordial while we're here.
And I think that a lot of people just suck it up, expect nothing more, expect it to, and get stuck. And that is the soul destroying piece of it. But if you're with like how you are with this improving, you've got the coaching mindset, it is a moment. And I think it's really important to be able to find ways, because a lot of the time you can't just jump. You can't be and be like, okay, I'm just going to quit this job. It sucks. You've got to stay for a while. You've got to get through it to get to the next thing.
You got food to put on the table.
So how do you
got food to put on the table, responsibilities. And I like the way you said you get stuck. And that's because some people, I guess you got to figure out what type of person you are. Do you just want to go to work so that you can pay the bills and you're just happy with how life is? Or do you want more? And I have that mindset of wanting more. I'm direct, I'm honest, and I let everyone know, hey, I'm here to pay my bills. I'm not here to be your friend. I'm nice to everybody, so I can definitely be nice to you. But am I going to take that baggage home with me? Because then that baggage goes home with you and you release it to your family. Then you're just...
So you're not in a victim mindset, is what's different, right? Your mindset is one of choice. You're choosing to do what you're doing. You're not being victimized by it. You're choosing it. It's a step towards where you're going.
Right.
And that mindset is really important. And I think what's important to me though is if I'm a leader,
Mm-hmm.
like whoever your leader is failing,
Right.
because this is the culture that they're allowing to exist, that they're putting up with.
Mm-hmm.
And that sucks. If I own that company, it's costing me a lot to have that dysfunctional leadership allow for this dysfunctional environment, because they're going to lose great guys
Right.
like
Well, and
you.
then you open up
They
a
can see,
residual door. You open up a door where you have people coming in and out, and it's costing you more money to train them instead of somebody you're going to keep.
yeah, oh, 100%. So I love that you're giving a great example of the kind of work environment that a lot of people find themselves in. It's dysfunctional. They realize they can't do anything to fix it. And I was in a job where and with my skill set,
Mm-hmm.
and was unable to fix the leadership. And so I was in a position where I was like, I'm out. I'm not going to stay here and die on this vine. And so for people that feel stuck, I think that it's so important to listen to what you're saying of, okay, how do I function here so I maintain my sense of my self-worth and my confidence
Mm-hmm.
to now propel to the next step.
Right.
And number one, surround yourself with cheerleaders, with people that want the best for
Mm-hmm.
you. Okay, keep going.
Well,
And what
and I
else?
think you said it. You hit it right on the head when you said it's the leadership. When you look at the leadership that's accepting this behavior, that continue to just come in and shove it under the rug instead of saying, "Hey, me, I'm a team building person. So I'm going to be like, hey, let's get together and let's talk. I don't like you for this reason. You're doing this wrong. And tell me, be open and tell me what I'm doing wrong." But with the
Yeah,
mindset that I have is I can come in here and I'll work circles around you guys. Just you're not going to outwork me. And I say that a lot because you're not going to outwork me with my family. And I say this to a lot of the guys I talk to that are having problems with multiple kids, mothers, and things like that. I let them know. I said, hey, if someone else is taking care of your kids more than you are, they're outworking you. And you can't be mad at that because you're allowing that. So when I go to work, no matter what it is, I'm going to work circles around you. My work speaks for itself. For anyone to damper my mindset at work, it's not going to happen. I'm going to go to work and I'm going to be like, hey, when I go home, you guys are still going to be here doing what you're doing in 5 years. I'm not. This isn't my end game. It's not my goal. Right now, this is only a vehicle for me to get to my next destination. And when I make it to that destination, I'll pick another vehicle that's going to get me to the next one.
yeah. Uh, so I was listening to David Beckham speaking about Lionel Messi, his first day of training with him, and he showed up at 6:50 and training starts at 10. And he said, all I can say is that Lionel Messi is a winner, and not because he wins a lot, but just his whole
Mm-hmm.
attitude. Here he is with all the success. He's still showing up at 6:50, running all the drills, getting all prepared like the young kids do.
Right.
And then he still cares if we're doing the wrong thing. He still cares. He gets upset if we lose. Like this guy is still wanting to win. And I think being able to maintain that is
It
incredible.
is.
But God bless him, having just been able to go into what he loves and doing what he
Mm-hmm.
loves. I think the beauty of when you do what you love, which you get to do because you have your podcast and you have your family. If your job is not what you love, I see it with people where I'm talking to them, and it's like they're just like
It drains them. Yeah,
energetically,
it drains them.
and the moment they talk about something that excites them, like they come
Mm-hmm.
alive, right? And I think it's so important to, even if you're in that life sucking job, have things that bring you
Mm-hmm.
alive. So
I'm glad you said that because you said it all right there. When you're talking to somebody and having a positive conversation, active communication, then you can see where their highlights are. When you start talking about something and they light up. And that's where, as a coach, I try to tell them, I say, hey, that right there is what you should be doing. Figure
uh-huh.
out a way to capitalize on that. Even like with my nephew, I had my 25-year-old nephew come down and live with me for a while. Since then, I've kicked him out because he wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing. But I love him to death. He's still
Good.
working 2 jobs.
Right.
He's in a band. He's doing his music. He's doing what he loves to do. And he's doing way better than what he was. And that's the only thing I expect for him was, hey, to be doing better than what you were doing last year. And so he's doing great. But at the same time, I would tell him, hey, you're passionate about this. That's what you should do. And he's like, no, I have a kid coming on the way and I got to work this 9 to 5 that I hate, that I dread. I'm like, man, this kid taught himself to play every instrument without going to school for it. He plays the harmonica, the drums, the piano. This kid plays so many instruments. And I'm like, music is your go-to. That's what you need to be doing. So find out what you can do as far as music and capitalize on that. So now he plays in a band and he makes money doing gigs and he works a full-time job, pay for the other bills and everything like that. But he's loving life a lot more. I can see he's more excited about life. Before he was just, I don't know what's going to happen and, you know, where I might end up. And I'm like, dude, you're just way happier than what you were. But I guess, and that's the thing, him being my nephew, my expectations were higher of him. Which is why when he wasn't meeting those, I was like, no, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And then I got to sit back, and I love my lady because she always reminds me of that. Did you ever consider that your expectations of him are just higher? And I'm like, that makes sense. That's why that's why we get on our kids, because we want them to do better.
I think it's a gift. It's you care. And I think that caring and accountability, you don't just care about him and don't want to hold him accountable. And you're not just hard ass on him. It's both of those things. You care a lot. You have that level of accountability. And when you don't care so much.
Right. You're just like, you go through the motions. Okay. Good job. Yeah. Great job. You did all right. Yeah. But then when you care and you have those standards, you're like, you could have did better. You got to be honest with them. So.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I hear June, my kid's dad, he's just like, that's not who we are. We don't quit. My little 10-year-old, he was like, he'd played 2 games of baseball. He'd started out really tired and he was shattered. He plays on a 12U travel. He's 10. And he gets his baseball bag, like his big old bag with all his catches, and he just starts walking down the road. And we're in Inglewood, and we're like 5 miles from where we live. And he just starts walking, and he doesn't look back, and he just keeps going.
I'm out of here.
And his dad, oh man, he was wild. You let the team down. They know they can't trust you. Meanwhile, Mum's in the background. He's 10 now.
Right.
He's 10.
I get that.
I like the fact that he knows when he's done. Okay, he could maybe communicate better.
Right.
Anyway, yes, old man was dad.
That's a two-sided coin. You know, I mean, as a father, you wanna see him do better, and you want to instill that drive in him. You also got to be open to listen to mom and be like, okay, yeah, you're right. He's 10. You know what I mean? So he's not comprehending or understanding things the same way that an adult would. You know, and I tell my son and my nephews this all the time. They're always like, they're 25 and 24 and 22, and they're like, I'm grown. And I'm like, no, you're not. I'm like, you're of age. You know what I mean? So you're of age, you're not grown. When you start tackling real responsibilities like children and a household and a mortgage, then you can say that you're grown. But yeah. And that's how I feel about the guys at work. Gotta let them know, hey, you guys have got some growing up to do, especially going back and forth on a phone arguing with somebody for 4 hours.
Yeah, that's crazy that the supervisor didn't shut that down. 64 text messages?
Yes, 64 text messages. And when he came in, we got another text message about 8 o'clock in the morning. He was like, I'm not happy. He was like, but I'm going to have to cool down before I address this. I was like, I'm pretty sure you're mad. I was like, so I just texted him back on a personal level and was like, LOL. And that's the kind of relationship that I keep with the supervisors. I try to make things peaceful. When it starts to get crazy, I'll send like a crazy text message back. And I'm like, so how'd you feel about that? But he's just like, yeah, go screw yourself. You know, so I'm like, hey. Yeah. But again, team building. Got to keep it simple.
That's why I really believe in team sport for kids. It's just everything's at work is about being a good team player. Parenting is a team sport. It's about being a good team player. You've got your roles, and if one of you doesn't show up and drops the ball, it impacts the entire game.
Right.
Yeah, until people can, and like the guys at your work, until they realize like it's a team sport. We're not all just individuals here.
No, and that happens a lot, especially with work. It's always first against second, second against third didn't do this, and first shift didn't do this. And my biggest thing is, honestly, I can pretty honestly say third shift is usually a little more laid back because you don't have upper management there. Everybody's laid back.
Right.
So you just get a lot of bickering going on. And I've worked a lot of jobs where, so before I started podcasting, I'm a quality engineer by trade. So as a quality engineer, I look at the quality, and I have to work with a team. I have to work with all the industrial engineers. I got to work with the production supervisors, coordinators, everything. So doing that, I learned to work with a team. And then I used to do all the orientations every week. So I would train all the new hires. So I would have to run them through safety, run them through quality, and just give them the lay of the land at the job. And I think that helped me out a lot with how I handle situations now. Because like you said, even at home, my favorite thing is keep it simple. KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. And I tell my sons this all the time. Just keep it simple, man. Like, you try to talk your way out of a problem, or you're trying to make up all these different excuses of why it should have went this way or why you did what you did. It's just keep it simple. The more simple you keep it, the easier life is going to be. Doesn't have to be complicated. In your relationship at home, keep it simple. Okay, sorry, babe, I was wrong. I'm open to hear what you got to say. Cool, we'll move on. And that's why I have a good relationship at home. The woman I'm with, I was married for 8 years. And the woman I'm with now, I dated 20 years ago. And since my divorce, her and I have been together about 4 years, and it's just been amazing. Everything is a team. I don't do anything without her, any decisions. And typically I'm not that person. I would have never done that. If I want to do something, I'm going to do it. Now I'm just like, yo, so what do you think about this? And we talk about everything, and we make all of our decisions that way. And it just makes it simple.
Yeah, it's so much more powerful when you're not going alone, right? When you've got your team. With that, it's been an absolute pleasure. I really enjoy speaking with you, and I look forward to staying connected. Definitely. And thank you for your insights today.
Definitely. I appreciate you taking the time to have me on.